And we're back, and it is COMP397, and we are in the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 4, lesson 4, part 1. So this is we have one more week of class, and then we're taking a short break. I guess for the week of Family Day, that's the week we're taking. So next week we're good, but the week after we're off, if I'm not wrong, right? Because we have 5 weeks in, and then 6 week we're off. So then, let's talk about our assignment number 1 before we get into the review. So I'd like to try and do that first. Assignment number 2, I mean. We're going to do a new assignment coming up. If you look up on eCentennial, you'll see that we have assignment number 2. It's called the Web Slot Machine, right? And what this is it's due Friday, February 26th at midnight, right? It's weighted a little heavier in some ways than the other game, just in terms of how many points it's going to be marked out of. But more or less, the structure is the same, right? So the value is 10%, and as we start off, we say, take a look at your JavaScript and your web technologies. So we're talking about things like TypeScript and Create.js to create this slot machine. Now, I'm going to give you a template for the logic of the slot machine, right? So you're not going to have to worry about, how the fruits are generated. We don't care about that stuff. That's not so important. And I'll give you some examples of the work that I'm talking about here. My thinking is, and what I want you guys to think about is, I want you to take my code, turn it into TypeScript, right? So this is the challenge, right? And then after you've taken the piece of code, you've got your logic, build an interface with buttons and everything else that basically acts as a slot machine. Okay, that's what it is. Now, who does not know what a slot machine is? Anybody? Every class is different, right? Some classes, because from a cultural perspective, you may not know what a slot machine is, and it's okay to put up your hand and say, I don't know. Anyone not know? Okay, good. So a slot machine, anyway, it's something we have in the casinos, right? And what we do is we pull the handle. We put coins in the slot machine. We feed the slot machine some money, and it's a bet. We make a bet. And when we pull the handle, depending on what kind of fruits come down on the windows of the slot machine, right? We can win money. That's what it is, right? So we're simulating that game. This is not a real game. We're not going to actually get any money here. Just as I think there's no money involved or anything like that. It's just for simulation purposes. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a slot machine that looks something like this, right? So one of these kind of interfaces. If my thing would stop spinning here, let's go. Here, this one. No, I don't want Java. Every week on Fridays, right? I guess I have to say yes at one point. So here we are. We've got this, so there's a few options here we can make. And I've seen different students make these kinds of slot machines. We're going to kind of make one from scratch ourselves. I'm going to actually build some of the components of a slot machine with you here in class, okay? And we'll talk about how to do that and how to create a absolute layout, right, for our UI. We're not going to make a responsive layout, so it's not going to work for every kind of device. So I mean, it'll work specifically for a device that's 640 by 480 again. Okay, so we're sticking to that size for now. Now, what if you wanted to make it responsive? Some people say, well, I want to make a responsive web game because everything's responsive these days. Sure, you can, and there's ways of doing that, but it takes a lot more work, and we have a limited time frame. But I'm sure you can figure out a way. If you thought about it, you'd have to have alternate images and an alternate screen size and stuff like that. You'd have to optimize your assets for different screen sizes. Okay, so we have our this thing we're going to build. This is the interface we're going to build, and you're going to get some logic that you're going to tie into this interface. So the only way I can click the spin button. So here's an example of the spin button. So I'm going to build a slot machine list. I'm going to click the spin button, and the only way that's going to be possible is if I feed this thing something like some coins or whatever, right? And I can choose a bet amount depending on what I choose here. I can click the spin button. So I'm making an interface. The spin button has really all the logic tied to it, right? So there's some things that are going to be involved to make this thing work properly. All right. Now, traditionally, this has been an easier one to do than number 1 in some ways, only because there's only one scene primarily. You don't have 2 or 3 scenes that you have to take care of. I will give you a bonus to use kind of an intro scene. If you make an intro scene that has a menu like play slot machine, kind of thing, your slot machine and a game over scene, I'll give you bonuses for that, right? Some extra points, but it's not required. The other thing that's not required is there's no animation requirement. All right, so you click the button and the images change. I didn't say you have to animate the images to change. That's bonus again, right? So if you want to learn how to do that, how to move images and animate, that's up to you. And the reason for that is because animation techniques and all that stuff is just extra requirements. You only have 2 weeks to do this thing again, right? So the more requirement I give you, the more challenge it's going to be, right? So I don't want to give you animation. If you don't have time to do it on your own, it's okay. I'm going to show you a full-fledged one with full animation. I'll do that, right? But it won't be, like I said, it will have nothing to do with the requirements. Okay, let's take a look. So the major requirements are the same. So you're going to build 3 images in a UI, each one representing the reel of the slot machine that's going to hold the fruits. So there's going to be 3 reels, like reel 1, reel 2, reel 3, right? And when you press the button, different images are going to come up in the reels. And if it's the same, like if it's a pattern of images, you're going to get paid out. There's going to be like credits you win or whatever, right? That's what the spin button. The spin button controls it all. But there's going to be 3 windows, if you will, or reels that are going to be housing those images. Okay, and that's worth 3 marks UI and 6 marks functionality. The spin button is going to be where all the action happens. You spin the button, and as long as there's credits that you've bet, the player places his bet, then everything happens. We're good. You're going to add a button control to your UI that allows the user to reset the game. So the whole game is reset. How do we do that? And then the other one is a UI that allows the user to quit the game. There's some problems there. How do I quit out of a browser, right? Quitting out of a browser is a security issue, right? So what that means is it's going to take you to another page. It's going to say, thank you for playing. That's quitting the game. That's good enough for me, all right? Please don't try and quit your browser. And there's ways of doing that, right? But it will not work in Chrome. Chrome prevents all that stuff from happening, right? So please be aware of that. So I say add labels and other appropriate controls, whatever you want to do, that display the user's money, his current jackpot, and the current bet, right? You lay that out the way you like. This is some creativity on your end, right? And ensure when the user bet the bet amount in the bet entry control, however the bet entry controls are made, right, that the program checks or validates if he has enough money. Now there's a way around that. Make bet buttons. So you make a bet button that has, like solid numbers like 10, 100, 5, whatever. So you only can bet a certain amount as opposed to typing it in. If you type it, first of all, there's no slot machine that I know of in this world in real life that you type in an amount. It's not going to happen, right? You put in you decide what's going to be. You put in a token, or whatever. You decide on the amount that you're going to put in, and that's how it works. Whether you put your credit card in or whatever. So. But I'm giving you some latitude here. So if you wanted to make it so that the person can enter any amount, he can or she can, but there has to be tested against how much money he really has. So if I only have 100 credits, I can't bet 200 credits because I don't have that money. So it's going to say, man, sorry, you don't have the money for that, right? And if it runs out of money, right, I want you to give the user the option for you to play the game again, like reset everything, right? Give the guy his money back and restart over, right? Different ways of approaching that. One is, just like we did with, we're doing with this game here, with our start over button, right? And I'm going to talk about the state machine that I put up online in a second. I'm going to go back to that, right, to explain some of that, the way the functionality works for you guys for tonight. Because some people are still going to be struggling kind of putting their game out tonight. And I want to talk about it a little bit. But just like you can go back to the start with this one, you can use it so that way you basically relaunch your scene, right? So you reinstantiate the scene. That's another way of doing it, all right? So there's many ways, many approaches of doing this problem, right? But you're creating a slot machine. The other one is include conditions that allow the player to potentially win the jackpot. So there's going to be, on most slot machines, yeah, you can play, but if you get a certain combination, like 3 sevens or something like that, all of a sudden, bing, 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 you win $5,000, right? It's beyond what would normally be, that you would get. You win whatever you have plus extra money, right? So give the player a chance to do that. And one other thing is this, and I haven't had this in the past, which is add a slot machine graphic to the background. So some people will try and make their own slot machine. Yeah, you can do that, but I'm okay if you just grab a slot machine graphic and modify it. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off grabbing a graphic from the web, take it in, modify it in a graphic manipulation program like GIMP or Fireworks or Photoshop or whatever, and then use that, lay out the graphics absolutely on it, and we're going to use that as a template. And I'll show you how to do that over the next course of days. So today and next time we get together as well. Internal documentation is the same. I'm asking you to use TypeScript again for your project. And of course, your external document is a little bit beefier because there's more stuff to put in there, right? So gameplay mechanics and controls and interface sketch and all that stuff that we asked you before. Similar to what we did for assignment number 1, but just some extra stuff that I've asked you to put in there. And again, sharing your files on GitHub and deploying to a cloud service is mandatory. So same as before. So the same kind of setup that we had before. Here's some optional points. So the slot machine activates sound clips each time the spin button is pressed. Remember, up to now, I haven't said make a sound happen. Never. I haven't asked you to make sounds at all, right? The other one is create an animation effect for the reels. It's a bonus, an optional game feature. You don't have to do this, right? These are extra features, right? Include additional reels. Instead of 3 reels, make it so it has 5 reels, right? I don't know, a different kind of game. That means you have to do your own logic, right, as well. So that's a real challenge for you to do. Some people have done that. One person one time did he used Create.js to create a faux 3-dimensional slot machine, like at an angle, like almost like in an orthographic mode. Don't ask me why. He said he spent 60 hours doing it, right? You know, again, these things can really spiral out of control, some of these things, right? Where it becomes heavy duty in terms of how many hours you spend. Okay, and we'll talk about hours in a second in terms of how long everyone spent on their other project. How about this? Include additional bet lines. So right now you only have one bet line, the one that goes right across. So the images that come across the bet line, that's the one. Those are the ones you compare. So I can say if I get like 7 banana apple, as an, I don't know, I'm making this up, right? Then you might get a point. But if I get blank with something else across that bet line, it's 0 because you got a blank, right? But then you can have more than one line. You have a line here and a line here too, right? So because they do that in the slots, right? You can have different, and also diagonal, some weird diagonal combination or whatever that you can get points. Again, more programming, and if you're really good at this kind of stuff and you're really interested in doing this, you can make it your own. Again, any one of these additional options can dig you into a black hole, so be careful. Please be careful, right? Because you know, you're going to you want to be able to get your minimum viable product out first. So get that MVP, that minimum viable product, the stuff, the requirements that I'm hitting first, and then add features. That's always what I tell you to do. And inevitably, every single time we do this assignment, somebody, for whatever reason, makes it do animation, and it has background sounds, but it doesn't do any calculation, right? So half of the requirement, like the actual betting piece, doesn't even work. Right? Guys, if I had a real client and he asked you to make a slot machine that's online that would do all the calculation and you did some animation, but it didn't actually do anything, I'm sorry, but it would be a fail, right? You have to think about it. The main deliverable isn't done. It doesn't do slot machine, right? So please don't do that. Don't like disable the logic so you can make a fancy effect. Get the basic stuff done first and then add to it. Okay, that's really, really important. Okay, and again, submitting your work is the same. An external document for your that will be included, a link to your project files on GitHub, and a link to your live site on a cloud service like Azure or Heroku or wherever you want it to put it on. Okay, those are the 3 things that you need. 20% deducted for the first day late, 10% deducted for each additional day. This thing is due, like I said, on Friday, February the 26th. That's a couple weeks out, plus the reading week. So you have a, you know, maybe a 2 and a bit weeks. If you, I don't know if you guys are going to spend reading week doing assignments. Maybe you will. Hope some of you won't, because some of you are going to go away or do something else, and that's fine. But I'm just telling you, this is what this thing is due. Here's what I do when I get an assignment like this. If I was going to be a student to do this, I would look at the point mark, 68 points, right? What was assignment 1 worth in terms of points? Right, 52, 68. Usually more requirement, more difficult, same time frame, same amount of percent. Percent the same, right? More points, more requirement, right? Harder assignment, right? So as I creep into the 70 range, that's like a 7 out of 10 difficulty because of the time frame, right? This isn't a 7 out of 10, but the time frame and the amount of requirements there are make it harder. That's what I want you to think about, right? So if you think about all the little things that are going to go on in the background, making it work with TypeScript, incorporating code you've never seen before, creating a UI, you know, all that stuff that you may not be good at, this is the stuff that eats up your time, right? Time frame for this assignment, minimum time. If I was going to do it from scratch, 4 hours, right? I'll tell you right now, that if I was going to do it from scratch, the whole thing, the images, the stuff, and because I know I've done this before, double that for you, All right, it's got to be at least 8 to 10 hours for you to make this thing go, right? And that means if you break it up over a 2-week period, you need to spend at least 5 hours a week on this thing. Do you have 5 hours a week? You may not, right? And if you don't, because remember, you're doing all the other things too, all the other assignments, right? So please schedule accordingly. This is not something that's, you can do and it's going to be no problem to do. There's going to be some details, and if you want to get full marks, you're going to have to do a little bit of prep for it. Now, you're going to start off with something, so that's a good thing. That's why I've given you, to alleviate some of the pain, a little bit of logic, right? Because otherwise, you'd have to do that piece too, right? Because, you'd have to figure out, well, how do I do all this stuff? So where do I find that logic? Let's go up online here. And on GitHub, of course. So if I go to GitHub, and I think I've put this one under myself. So it's under my last name here. And if I was to search in my repositories for slot machine, right? So I go slot machine. And look at the date here, 2014, right? Way back 2014, I had this little assignment going, right? So let's pull this one down and see what it does, right? So I'm going to go to my slot machine here. And notice this assignment is made for Visual Studio, right? This little slot machine assignment, okay? So let's pull it down. I'm going to download this thing and put it up on my desktop for a second. So here's my desktop, and I'm just gonna, kind of save it there, and I'm going to open it up. So we'll take a look at what I'm giving you. This is part of the assignment piece, okay? So there it is on the top right. I'm going to get rid of this because I don't need this anymore. I've just unzipped it. And let's rename this thing instead of slot machine, just so we can open it up here so you can see it in pieces. Just slot machine by itself. I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, right? And you're going to notice immediately that it's not a Visual Studio Code assignment. It's a Visual Studio project, right? Because you see this, once you see this, the SLN file, the solution file, you know it's Visual Studio, right? So that's one thing to know. And there it is. It says Visual Studio file from Visual Studio 2013. That's the last time I dealt with it. But that's okay because inside there is the JavaScript, the bare bones JavaScript to make this thing go. And the logic to make this thing launch is very simple. Let's take a look at this thing. So how would I launch this thing? First, I want to right click and I'm going to open this or reveal this thing in Finder, right? Which in your case would be Open in Explorer. And when I open this thing in Finder, and I'm looking at my desktop, and I'm looking at slot machine, here it is. Here's slot machine. And if I go to inside to index.html here, I'm going to double click. I'm going to show you what you get. You get not too much. There's no interface on this one. Double click. You get this. Here's my jackpot, my player money. So you have some guy who came up with this idea, right, and says, hey, I want you to make this into a game. I want you to make this little assignment into a graphic user interface. How do I do it? Well, let's check this out. I've got my jackpot, that's 500. I got my player money, which is 1,000. And then, you know what? Let's bet $100. Here it goes, 100 points or whatever. And I'm going to click spin. Spin, and all of a sudden it says, here's your result. Cherry, banana, grapes. Cherry, banana, grapes, right? Cherry, banana, grapes actually is a win because it doesn't include a blank in my logic, right? If I have a blank that comes up, you've lost. But here, I made $100. So now, notice that my update, my player money just went to $1,100, or 1,100 points, if you will, all right? Let's spin again. Okay, hey, I won again. Grapes, bell, orange, another 100. So now it's 1,200. Let's click. Okay, I lost there because it has orange, orange. So two of the same. We're on a good streak there. Blank. So blank means I lost. If I have blank in any one of the lines, I lose, right? Let's keep spinning a bunch of times. So I'm going to keep spinning. I won 100. I lost, I lost, I lost. By the way, you'll lose more often than win. And you're going to see the statistics. These statistics, I don't care about them in the real game you're going to make. Your UI, I don't care about you showing me the statistics. This is for you to understand how the logic works, right? Notice that I have 8 turns and I have 4 wins and 4 losses so far. But if I continue, my win ratio is 50%. That's going to go down, watch. And it should go down and hug somewhere around the 20% range where it's going to hover. Oh, I ran out of money, right? So I kept on going. It kept on luring me in to win. And at the end, my jackpot is 5,000, right? So I kept on betting, 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 right? And the jackpot is, the way it's going to work is it takes a percentage of your winnings and or the percentage of your money and puts it in there because that's how it works in the real world. Now, the money's coming from other players. It's just simulating that, okay? So don't worry about that. And if I press OK, do you want to play again? If I press OK, what it does is it resets everything. The jackpot stays the same, But now the win ratio doesn't make any sense, and I'm going to spin, and you're going to see the win ratio is going to stay around again the 20% range until I lose my money. Oh, it went to 27 and lost my money again. Notice a pattern. I'm always going to lose my money. So if you guys are thinking about going to play the slot machines, don't, because at the end, if you play long enough, you lose your money. That's how the machines are made, right? They're made for you to lose your money. They're not made for you to win. There is no luck. It's just percentages, probability, and chances are, unless you remove yourself early from the game, you'll lose eventually. Everyone's a loser at the long run, right? Lifetime, every player who gambles in any game is down. All right, that's just the rule, and it's just statistics. Games are not made for you to win. Games are made for you to lose. Okay. Okay, so if that's the case, this is what we're building, and we're just going to make this little slot machine logic behind here into a UI. Now you can choose to do this any way you like, as long as you use create.js, TypeScript, and so on, the structure we made. Now, let me show you some examples, and for that, I'm going to go into the other side of my code to show you the examples. I'm going to launch Visual Studio Code, and hopefully my my Windows machine will not stop today, right? So I want to strangle it, right? So I'm just going to launch my Windows machine in a VM. Let's see if this works. I don't know why this is all up here. Probably something I was doing last time. And I'm going to pull up Visual Studio for this one to show you what it looks like on Visual Studio, because I have some examples here that I want to show you, and I don't want to, some things that I haven't shared with you online, chances are, right? Now, I'm not sure actually. Before I launch this, there might be another example of a completed project that I have online. I may have put that up on Centennial. Let's take a look and see if I have. Normally I don't, because it's like a solution set, right? So if I go here and if I go look at Centennial, let's see if I've got a slot machine. Chances are I won't. And if I search for, in my repository, if I search for slots, oh, I do. So I got oh, this is a slot machine demo we kind of put together, and I forked this one. So this demo is what I do every class. So we're going to do one of these for our class, right? Which is going to be more complete. But let me show you the one I'm going to get from this stuff. Right? Firewall settings are off. Okay, there we go. Turn this off here, and let's launch Visual Studio, which would be the same as if you launched it on your PC. So I'm going to launch Visual Studio here. Bear with me while I do this. Hopefully it won't crap out like it did last time. It's just a space issue. I'm running out of space because I always like push my machine to the max. I got 1 terabyte and it's all full. Terabyte SSD. It's full. Why? Because I'm not playing games with it. It's not that. It's just like literally, although I have some games in the background, but like they're small, right? It's not that. It's just doing other things. I'm doing project after project after project, and finally I'm full, believe it or not. All right, anyway, so when this launches, what we're going to talk about is, you know, how do I do this? So I always come up with different versions of the same game, right? So, okay, good. That's good. So that launch. Just want to make sure that this can launch. That's why I came here. Okay, so where I want to look actually is I have some spaces that I have on here for my on my PC, and I have some space where I kind of cache my documents, right? And everyone does things differently. You might organize your PC a little different than me in terms of how you put things around. But in my documents window, I have typically some examples, and I have kind of some kind of, let's see if I have it here. Is it the wrong one? Bear with me while I look at the wrong thing. This is not the right one. This VM. Bear with me. Tom. Users. Tom. Documents. There we go. That should be the one. Yes, GitHub. So if I look at GitHub, I'm going to see if that's the one. I have several versions of my slot machine. Let me show you. So the first version was the one I kind of showed you already, slot machine version 1. Let me show you version 2. So this is the one where I would actually have to make this thing launch. So I'll just double click the solution file, and it'll bring up Visual Studio. So I'll show you my solution. So this is my first solution that I came up for slot machine. Hopefully it'll run without it crapping out. That would be bad. Okay. Come on. Yay. So this is version 2. Yay. Okay, now I do use TypeScript here. So if I was to run this thing in Chrome, right? We're going to build this from scratch, guys, so don't worry, right? Like for people who are looking at it going, what is it doing, right? I've got this thing going on. So I've got the interface, and one day you're going to see the end result, which is, so slot machine, yeah? A little bit of background, bonus, right? I click a button, right? I bet some money, 25, and I click spin, right? That's the change. So instead of going from a non-UI, I'm going to a UI view of the same thing. That's lucky. I don't know how I won that. Let's try it again. That's what I want to see. I want to see fail. I want to see the person lose, because that's what slot machines are for. So let's do a couple of spins. Notice how I hover over. What the hell? I hover over. It's very weird. I hover over and I get that spin effect because I'm actually swapping out the images here. That's what I'm doing, right? Swapping it out. And the same thing goes if I don't have any money, right? So if I run out of money, when I first started this off, if you notice, it was like an X or a do not allowed. It was grayed out, right? Let's try a little bit more money, like 100. Definitely should lose faster there, right? There we go. And I only have 1,000 credits. Let's go. No, I will not. Right. 500, and then now we're going to bet like all of our money. So 2 spins, and we'll be gone, right? 1, 2. Good. I've got money. So now I want to bet. I want to bet 25, and if I hover over, I click, it's going to say, hey man, you ran out of money, right? Now I pick some funny effects or whatever. Do you want to play again? I press OK. If I press OK, it resets me. I have my power button and I have my reset button. Both those work. Reset. Do I want to reset? Yes, I do. And how about this one? My power button. Do I press it off? I want to power it off. Are you sure? It says, and what it says is, do you want to prevent this from additional dialogue? I'm going to say no, and press OK, and it closes Chrome. Now, it took a bit of doing to do that. Chances are, when you make yours, it won't close the browser. It's not going to happen because in the latest versions of stuff, those doesn't happen. So that's like solution 1. But that's like me doing a solution and saying, guys, like this is the, kind of a cool one, but not really that great. So I wanted to go to the next level. So here's version 3, right? Now this is taking it further because I had time. This took me, basically about 10 hours to do, right? This, by the time, I think around 10 hours by version 3, right? All right, so let's take a look. So version 3 had a lot of different, more stuff, right? But the stuff that was happening is in the background. Like you wouldn't see a lot of changes on the front end too much. It had some stuff going on, but I had some problems I had to work out. And I worked it out in the background in terms of the way I structured my code and all that stuff. I was starting to refine at this stage. No, I'm not going to change my TypeScript version. No. So if I change my TypeScript version, it may not work anymore because different versions of everything here, right? This older code. If you upgrade your TypeScript and you upgrade your Create.js, sometimes, it's like upgrading anything. You'll have breaking changes, right? So same idea, but let's take a look at the difference here, right? If I click on here, this is version 3, right? Spin. You don't see a difference, right? But the difference is going on in the background here. So exactly the same interface. Let me refresh this just to make sure. Sometimes what happens is it caches, which is really ugly. And that means there are a lot of changes going on, but you just can't see the changes happening, right? Let me try this one more time. Make sure that we're good with it. Now look at it, right? This is actually version 3. So notice that I have half a fruit out here and half a fruit down there. Uh-oh, that means something else is going on. Before I had nothing in the windows, right? So that was the change. Now watch. This is version 3. I had some problems here, and again, I did some refinements after this one. It was almost where I wanted it to be, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. So again, it's all in the background, all the stuff in the game scripts where I did most of my my changes, right? Now you can't see this, but in the past, when I was doing these things, as it evolved, I had everything in one big JavaScript file. right? I didn't break it out into different folders at all. So I wanted to refine that, and this is, you're good. You're getting all the refinements now. Like this is several years now, right? By the way, this is just an update from 2014, but I've been doing this one from 2011, right? Like these kinds of, this same program that I've been using. Okay, good. Let's try, can't install updates. Good, don't install bloody updates, Microsoft. Let's go, let's try the next one, which is, and again, you won't see much here because version 4 is like version 3 with refinements on the back end again, all right? But I want to show you how I step this up. Now, by the way, all of these had their own GitHub repositories in the back end as well. I was doing GitHub at the same time. Those are in private repositories that you can't see right now, right? But they're there, right? That I have them up and running. I just want to show you these ones so you see where they are. Visual Studio is a great great IDE. It's 70 million lines of code, and it does TypeScript beautifully. It actually does TypeScript easier than Visual Studio Code. The reason I'm getting you to do Visual Studio Code, like I said before, now this is more of a new structure. See, does it remind you of something you've seen before? Yes. Do I do caching here differently? Yes. I use an asset manager. I do all kinds of stuff that I do different. So from an efficiency perspective, I was way more efficient at this stage, right? Let's see the difference. Now I'm going to have to, like I said, run it and refresh it because unfortunately what happens with Google, with Chrome, at times is it maintains the, it looks at the last version, right? So let me just refresh it. Can I come up? And there we go. All right, similar thing on the front end, right? But when I press the buttons now, there's more back-end work that I did to make everything a little smoother. I had some issues with some of these images. And how did I do the animation anyway? How did I do this stuff? Like, how do I make these things look like they're moving? They actually are, right? These images don't start here. These images start up here. What I'm doing is I'm actually passing the images down across the button line, right? So that they actually look like they're just moving. But how can I do that? How can I hide the images that are out here? Well, what you can do with these rectangles, each of these rectangles here are just containers. And what you can do is you can use filters for the containers so you clip all the other information away. So actually what you're really saying is a clipped version of, and each of these things is a container so that each container only shows the stuff that's inside the viewport. Outside of the viewport is a bunch of other information. Now, one thing you can't do with containers, I'll tell you right now, you can't size a container in create.js to a specific size. You can't say create.js.width, this container, the container.width is equal to, can't do that. And you can't do a height. The containers in create.js expand to fit anything you put into them. So these images should actually be really long, like you should be able to see everything. But you can use filtering on containers so that way you cut exactly how big they are. So that's where you say my container is only going to be, my filter is only going to allow me to see this piece of the container. That's how I did it. And these images do fall. And as they fall down, they come to a certain point, and then they reset. So I just reset everything. So I generate the images up here. I keep track of it in an array, in a grid. And as I come down, I know already which line it's going to stop at, because that's the line that's the winner. Yes? They're always randomly generated. Everything is randomly generated in my array. In real life, right? When you had old slot machines, they actually had a big reel, like a big wheel, and the wheel would have a fixed number of images, probably like, I'm not joking around, 100 images randomly placed in the wheel. And as the wheel would shift in place with a gear, it would come and stop in front of the window. It would go click, click, and it would stop. And if all the images were the same, because the gear inside would determine that they were all the same, you would have the win. It would be mechanical slot machine, right? Nowadays with digital slot machines, like you said, they're all random images, but they do seem to have some kind of animation. This is just one way of doing it. All right, so I wanted to show you those as possible solutions about things that you can add in to make it go. It's not impossible to make it all happen. I'm just going to shut my machine down here for a second. Not this, my virtual machine, because virtual machines tax memory, right, which we don't want to do. So that's, I just wanted to show you that so you understand how that's all being done, right? Let's take a look at the actual code behind the slot machine that I pulled up in Visual Studio Code though, right? Because in Visual Studio Code, I have a little bit of logic here, and I have it on this thing called main.js. I'm also using a little bit of jQuery to access the front end, right? So this is like, literally, there's not much going on here. Let's take a look. Here's my jackpot. So I used jQuery basically to change the text value of my jackpot, and then so text value of an item that's on my HTML page, as an example, that is labeled as jackpot. That's the idea of it, and I'm just changing it so that it says jackpot plus jackpot. That's all it's doing. So very, very simple ways of changing content on a page. This is manipulating the DOM, but the old way, right? We're not going to do this. We're going to use a canvas, right? When we use create.js. Okay, take a look. I have a bunch of fruits and stuff, and this is traditional JavaScript, like almost like to the T. I haven't really done any kind of TypeScripting here at all. And that's what you're getting. You're getting traditional JavaScript, and you can convert it into TypeScript. How do we do that? The one thing is this little code here. Here's your switch statement, and you say this. Well, depending on what my outcome is, I'm going to bet, I'm going to have a spin result. And what I want to do is, depending on what my spin result is, I made a custom function called checkRange. Check the range. If the value lands between these two bounds, as an example, then you have a blank. Then you have grapes. Then you have banana. And all I'm doing is adding whatever the outcome is going to be into an array. That's all the logic is. So I keep track of the value into an array. And the array is a multi-dimensional array. All right. So I have, well, it's an array of arrays, if you will, array of strings. That's a better way to say it. And I got two of them. I got the bet line, which is basically an array of strings that I initialize as nothing, blanks. And then what I do is my outcome creates a value that I'm going to return. And that's what it does. So that's really what the logic is in the background. It determines what I'm spinning, what I'm getting. And I build my bet line, and all I'm doing is building an array of strings. And it's outputting to the console at this point. So if I have an array of strings, I can compare that and determine the winnings. So I have another function called determine winnings. And what I do is I say this: if there's no blanks that exist, so I got no blanks, right? That means I have to win if there's no blanks. If blanks equal to 0, that means I have fruits in my display, and that means I'm a winner. I got to determine how much of a winner I am. If I have one blank, then I skip all the winnings. There's no winnings, right? Very, very simple logic, right? So I do a bunch of if-else statements, and again, you can compare determine the winnings in different ways. But a bunch of very simple if-else statements. I say, well, if grapes are equal to 3, so there's 3 grapes, because all I do is I tally how many are each one, right? I say, well, there's 3 grapes, or 5 grapes, or 2 bananas, or whatever. The highest winnings, obviously, are 7s. If I get 3 7s, then I take my player bet and multiply it by 100, right? So what I'm doing is I'm comparing. This is doing it very simply without using regular expressions. The right way to do it, of course, is to compare the strings, the big string value, and compare how many of each thing I have. And I can use regular expressions to do that, but it's more complex, and I didn't want to include that for you, because then you wouldn't understand it. For the most part, people don't understand regular expressions, right? Unless you do, put up your hand if you understand how to put together a regular expression. Maybe someone does. Right? No one does. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So that's why I don't use them. And I didn't use lambdas. I didn't want to use any lambda expressions or anything like that. So that's why I created this tally system. We don't have to do it that way anymore, because we can create classes with TypeScript, right? In order for us to, to calculate everything. But this is the code you're going to get. This is the code you're going to inherit. Notice that this is the spin button function, right? My spin button, what it's going to do is every time I click the spin button, it generates the result and calculates if I've won. That's similar to what you're going to do here when you put this data together in your create.js UI. Okay, so nothing different there. So the challenge in this project, going back to the original question, is how do I take somebody's code and make it into TypeScript, convert something that's a very basic UI, basic HTML, into something that's a real game, a UI that has graphics in the background. How do I do that? Right, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Questions for this one? So there's different challenges in this one. Typically, this one is not that difficult to get through if you follow the instructions that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to build it with you as we go and show you where to get everything and how to put things together, make sounds, and the whole thing. But you're going to have to skip ahead of me because I'm only have so much time. Now, the great thing is I have a bunch of videos, right? So I've already made videos on this one. You can always skip ahead and look at last semester's videos, and you can see what we've done and how I built it out. If you really want to move ahead, it's there for you. So nothing's really changing here in terms of the outline. I've added a couple of different things here in terms of cloud deployment, which I didn't have last semester because now we're moving towards the cloud all the time. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. Please put up your hand if you have any questions. So I want to answer the questions for this assignment. Assignment 2, due February 26th on Friday, the week after you get back from break, which is effectively your week 6 at midnight. Okay. Worst case, if you can't get it done by that day, Saturday would be 20%. Sunday would be another 10% off. And by Monday, you would have lost another almost 40% of your mark. Right. So Monday it closes. So 26th, 27th, 28th, the 29th. Is there a 29th February this year? 29th, it's done, right? So on leap year, so next year there won't be a 29th, I'll have to change that, right? But so on the day of leap year, right? That would be when this assignment closes. So you won't be able to give anything beyond that point. Okay. All right, so let's stop recording, and then it's 4:18. We've kind of gone for about almost an hour. Let's take a short break because I know I've given you a new assignment, and then when we come back, let's take like 10 minutes, and when I come back, I'll go into the next piece. Okay, let's do that now, a little earlier, and people can get their coffee before it closes.